All right, guys, remember what we're looking for. And don't trust anyone.
Whoa, what?
Hey, baby. Where are your parents? Hey, who's baby? What? Really? A con baby? Impressive. We could use someone like you. Let's catch you up. My name is Raya. Our lands have been at war for as long as we can remember. Our people never see eye to eye.
My daughter, I believe our people can come together again. But someone has to take the first step.
Now, in order to restore peace, we must find the last dragon.
I wish to join this fellowship of butt kickery.
Let's go. We'll have to watch our backs. We're not the only ones looking. 6 years of searching. Please let this be it. Oh, mighty Sisu!
Who said that?
We really need your help.
I'm gonna be real with you. I'm not like the best dragon. Have you ever done like a group project, but there's like that one kid who didn't pitch in as much, but still ended up with the same grade?
We're doomed.
You and the dragon are coming with me.
My sword here says we're not. The world's broken. You can't trust anyone.
Maybe it's broken because you don't trust anyone. You just have to take the first step. I just shape changed.
Dragons can do that?
Look how close my butt is to my head. It's gonna make digestion so much faster.
In theaters or ordered on Disney Plus with Premier Access, March 5th.
Hi, everyone. My name's Amy Dotson, and I'm the director of the Portland International Film Festival in Portland, Oregon. And I'm the curator of film and new media at the Portland Art Museum. And we are just thrilled to have producer Osnat Shur and writer Adele Lim from the amazing film, according to both me and my 8-year-old daughter, Raya and the Last Dragon. So welcome to both of you, and thank you for joining us virtually all the way here in Portland.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Hi.
Yeah, maybe if you don't mind, we're going to keep it casual because that's just the Portland way. But maybe if you both don't mind telling us a little bit about yourselves and what role you played in bringing Raya to life, just as a kickoff for everybody.
Sure. You want to start, Adele?
Sure. I'm Adele Lim, co-writer for Raya and the Last Dragon.
And what role did you play in helping bring Raya to life? She wrote, she is behind so much of the great characters and story twists and themes. And so, yeah, she's responsible for a lot of what you see on the screen. And my name is Osnat Shur, and I am the producer. And it was my job to get the film made as well as I could, as well as to make a great film, but also as much as possible with a happy crew.
Amazing. Our whole motto here is Cinema Unbound. And so we love cinema in all of its forms. And our whole idea is whether it is on your phone or your big screen or somewhere in between, we love watching cinematic stories come to life. And we also have a range of folks from young people that are learning quite literally next week how to do animation for the first time with household objects around their house, to a really flourishing and amazing animation community up here, especially in the stop motion area. So before we get into the beauty that is Raya, I'd love to hear from both of you just how you got your start in animation and what was your first experience doing animation work? And I know that those answers might be quite different for both of you. So I'm really intrigued to hear how you came into the animation world.
It's a great question. And, I was going to say that what I thought was the answer, but then when you talked about doing animation, that you're going to have kids doing animation with household objects, I remembered that one of my first film school projects. I did a stop motion, and I forgot all about it because I was in live action for years. A stop motion animation, a love story, a love triangle with scarves, and that was one of the. That was me in film school in New York. So I suppose that's how. But I was working in live action, working in documentaries, working in many different areas. Did a little bit of animation for a nonprofit project, and then honestly got lucky enough to get into animation at Pixar. They were looking for someone to run what was called the shorts group at the time. It was everything that isn't the feature. We actually did a lot of docs, but we also did the short films, the original ones, the derivative ones, theme parks, anything. And I didn't have much animation experience, and I think the other applicants did. But I think what was really smart was the head of production came from theater, and her philosophy was you can tell if someone's going to be good at production or not. Animation, you can learn. Theater, you can learn. Live action, you can learn. And so I got lucky enough to be hired and went on then to Disney Animation Studios head of development, then producing Moana and now Raya.
Great. And Adele, what about you?
Oh, the first time I worked for animation was probably when I was just starting out. And before I became a real TV writer, I had a job writing for Digimon Digital Monsters, this TV show. But it wasn't really writing for animation. The cartoon was already, created in Japanese. And my job as the writer at that point, it was this thankless job of like taking that story and rewriting it so that it would make sense for American audiences and American kids, and just like writing dialogue that would match like the mouth opening. So very different from what I did at Raya. So I had like a long career as a TV film writer, and then I had a call from Disney and met with Osnat, and never thought anything would come from it. But then Osnat said, we have this amazing project. We've got this kick-ass female protagonist, this amazing Eastern water dragon, and I was like, I'm in. Like let's go. And that was 3 years ago.
That's
Actually,
amazing.
you had one question. She had one question before she committed. Does she have a sword?
Did I ask that? Yeah, it sounds like me.
You'll have to meet my 8-year-old daughter, because that was all she was talking about, was like, oh yeah, there's got to be a sword and there's got to be like the cool stuff. But you all have been working on this for, I believe, 4 years now, and it'd be interesting, I think, for folks that maybe just watched it this weekend to really know a little bit more about how Raya as a character and as a story came to life. I also know that you all had some challenges of doing this all remotely during a pandemic. So maybe talking about both, of just the origin story of how Raya came to life in the world that she lives in, and also then how perhaps you pivoted during this particular time to really, honestly, I can only imagine how many things as a producer, especially, you had to say, oh, really, we're doing it this way, are we? So I'd love to hear more.
It was the kind of thing that if somebody had asked you if you can do it, you'd say, no, or you're crazy, we can't. And yet we did. I've been on the film for about 4 years, and a lot of the time we spend in script and story. So we'll script the film, we'll storyboard it, we'll do an entire film in storyboards with us doing voices and things. And then we'll all collect with all the other directors and writers and our creative story trust, watch a screening and spend a day or two either tearing it apart or at least building on what works and taking out what doesn't. So you have the benefit of this great team of peers who set aside their agenda to help. And we do that a lot. We do that up to about 8 times during the making of a film. And gradually through the process, you start to figure out what shape things are going to take. So Raya's story evolved a lot. I don't know, Adele, do you want to lead us through how level?
Sure. Yeah, I think when I came on, there was already a lot of visual development work done, and the filmmakers had traveled to Southeast Asia and were so inspired by it. And I don't think neither of us knew that I'd grown up in Southeast Asia, and so this was really exciting for me. It's a big part of my upbringing, a big part of my world, and there was I've never really had a chance to really celebrate that. And here was Raya. So I think we drew from two primary inspirations from Southeast Asia. I mean, there's so much of it. You'll see it in the movies, every tiny little detail, the gestures of characters, the textiles, the buildings. But the larger inspiration really came from that sense of community that you find, throughout all the countries and regions and cultures of Southeast Asia, even, the diversity of races and religions, even in one country. And that, that really is what makes the food, the arts, in that region just so amazing and colorful and transcendent. And, so coupling that with really figuring out like who our main character was and what journey she was going to go on. We knew we wanted her to really unite this divided land. And we got to, who were the characters who were going to inhabit these lands, who would she meet along the journey. And with the character of Raya, it was an interesting evolution because when I first started, there was this more idea of her as being this lone rider, that she's this gunman who kind of rolls into town on her steed and she's really stoic. But as we talked about it, and talked about her and put up these screenings, what we realized is having a stoic character who doesn't crack a smile in a broken world can be really alienating, and you don't really connect with her as much as you want to. So then, this it's to the process that Osnat talked about, like, putting up screenings to see if they work, and then, taking it all down and, trying to improve the parts that don't. And so Raya herself, as the film progressed, really became a lot more warm and engaging. And I think that she really came to life probably when Kelly Marie Tran stepped into the recording booth. It's one of the few moments in animation where you get any amount of spontaneity, that sort of like that anima, that life. And so it was really exciting. First of all, as a writer, I normally don't read my words or perform my words. I'm terrible. That's why I'm behind the camera. But, being able to be in a booth with her because you're reading across from the actor, and just seeing how much love and empathy and vulnerability and tenderness she put into that character really inspired, Kui Gwen, my co-writer, and myself, and inspired the filmmakers, the directors, and, showed us a path to lean even further into that. And so, with the whole journey of like these characters and Raya really being solely in the center of it, it felt like, she's a real girl and now they're real people. So it's tremendous.
No, I think that you're really, the film is really inspired. I mean, I know the 8-year-old girl set, but I think it's inspired women everywhere because both in front of and behind the camera, there's so many folks that are lending their talents to bring Raya to life. And, one thing that came up in our house was, she's so smart and strong and independent, kind of like Moana, right? That you worked on before, right? This is a new generation of female and female identifying heroes and heroines. And I think we'd be curious in our household, at least, but I imagine households everywhere. Who were some of the inspirations for Raya and the supporting characters? We have a theory or two about, Princess Leia and some others, but those are just our theories. And we'd love to hear from you almost what the Pinterest board of strong, amazing women and stories you kind of derived Raya from.
This is something that Adele and I particularly talked a lot about because there aren't really that many to talk about. If you're looking for films, first of all, with a central friendship between two female characters as the center of a feature, there aren't really hardly any. And then you look at the kind of the hero stories with a female heroine, they tend to be very, they don't crack a smile, they don't crack a joke, they're kind of perfect from the beginning, they stay a certain way. So many things that we did on this film, the inspirations honestly are more either from our lives, like I know Adele can speak to it as well in the region. I was born in Israel. I come from a long line of strong women. I know so many strong women. There's so many strong women behind the camera on this film. And they're allowed to be flawed and allowed to have feelings, even if they're rage, and just allowed to be. And I think that plays in the relationship between Sisu and Raya, and definitely in a whole exciting way in the relationship between Raya and Amari, since it's such a complex, interesting relationship. So I think a lot of our, even though we all talk about movies and we love Indiana Jones and Star Wars and Miyazaki and all sorts of other films that we refer to, I think a lot of this felt like it was fresh from our lives. You can talk to it in Southeast Asia as well, right, Adele?
Oh yeah, to what Osnat said, there were a bunch of different influences for me personally. First of all, growing up in Malaysia, I watched a lot of kung fu action movies from Hong Kong. So in those movies, you'll have a lot of amazing female characters, and they can be like the pretty girl, the villain, like the awful like stepmother, but a lot of them could still whip out a sword and you just like lay waste to all the bad guys around them. And I loved having that in my life. And it wasn't until I got to America where I realized like not every girl got to watch that growing up. And secondly, what I think a lot of people don't realize about Southeast Asia is that we have this great tradition of like female leaders, female warriors, like historically in Malaysia, in Thailand, in Vietnam, and that's part of that's part of the lore when you're growing up, and it's those traits that you see in Southeast Asian women today. Like even if you look at studies, like whether it's economically, politically, in business, like the women are much more of a presence there than I think even over here. So, really wanting all our female characters in Raya to embody that, that same spirit. And I think the thing Ozna and I are most proud of with Kumandra is that the fact that our three main characters are women, them being female is never seen as a drawback. It's never seen as an obstacle that they have to overcome. It's not part of their journey, that they are women and that's very much part of their characters, but it's not their defining character. That, that once you're free of that, you can just pursue your journey and your adventure like anybody else, and that's what we want. That, and also representation in the background, that whether it's the army or the kitchen or the leaders of the chiefs, that there is this amazing split that you see between men and women, and we never really shine a light on that. It's just that's just the ideal world.
Speaking of ideal world, I was very impressed. Fantasy worlds that mirror real world artistry and traditions and culture. That has a long, rich history in film and television and all that good stuff. But, both from a writer and a producer's perspective, how did the team work together to create Kumandra? Because I know that it's, a lot of cooks in the kitchen, as you were saying, and a lot of folks with ideas. And how do you do that in a way that seems equitable, but also allows for all of those interesting details that you all could, like you said, from the food to the richness of the backgrounds to just how you've created quite literally every detail to reflect both a fantasy and a reality.
It's true. We talk about the fact that we have meetings even about a blink. There's like nothing in animation that just comes. We think about everything and every detail has to be created. I think for us it was a question of first of all, including people who know, because that's sort of the basis of it. So once we had, as Adele said, we recognized from our first trips actually to Southeast Asia that the thing we wanted to talk about, which is community, which is coming together despite or even because of with our differences for a greater good, was so alive and vibrant in so many parts of Southeast Asia. And then you add to that, once you're grounded there, then we're talking also about gorgeous look and textures and fabrics and architecture and the rivers and the food and the food and the food. And then we start engaging people who know. And so we created what we call our Southeast Asia Story Trust, which included an anthropologist, archaeologist, textile expert, quite a number of people with different expertise from the region, and linguists. And then, of course, what was as important, if not more so, was that there are people in the key creative storytelling that are from the region, that grew up in the region, whether it's Adele, who's Malaysian, queer co-writers, Vietnamese heritage, our head of story, Fawn, who's Thai, and many others. And that becomes just part of the DNA of the film. So it's not just sort of research you did and applied. It's there would be these great conversations being tossing around the room. Hey, we do that. Do you do that? Hey, we do that too. Hey, can we get that in the film too? Whatever it is. If it was about food or if it was about gestures, I think.
Yeah, and to pick up what to what I was not started on. There's been a lot of talk about representation on the screen and how you make sure that you're putting forward an authentic portrayal of a culture, of a people. And I think the only way you really get that is from representation behind the screen. And Disney, to its credit, when I came on, I was amazed, surprised to see so many people, either from Southeast Asia or people who had Southeast Asian cultural roots in the story team, in animation, in visual development, not put together just for this movie, but who were already there, people that, were already being nurtured by Disney. And so that was tremendous. So you would have it, you'd have Southeast Asia on the script page, but you'd also have it, in all these like visual ideas that the departments would come up with. You'd have it in the textiles, in the character design, in all the small like the fruits, and the way the storyboard artists put in all these tiny little details, almost as like love missives, to their parents or to their culture and to their countries. And these are things that are not necessarily, taught in a seminar or something that you can learn on necessarily on a trip. It's the way we grew up. And so, hopefully, even if you know nothing about Southeast Asia, that you're able to feel, you're able to feel that love and that authenticity coming off the screen. I would say that's the first thing. And the other note is, to your question about like, collaboration. And I would say, coming into it as a television writer was very, very helpful, because in TV, it has to be collaborative because you're making so many episodes, you're on a schedule. And so you're there with a big group of writers. And similarly, on a Disney animated feature, it is the most collaborative writing job you will ever have, or, that I will ever have, I think, because you're in this story room and it's this big table. And instead of writers, I have story artists and the director and Oznat. And we're all throwing into these ideas, and you can look at it as a challenge, because there definitely has to be a central vision for your movie, but truly it also is incredibly empowering because you've got all these people on this journey with you. That as a writer, even when I'm writing a specific scene, I don't have to, kill myself thinking, having to like build the entire world, having to come up with every visual detail, particularly for a fantasy world that we're building from scratch. I can write, the important the drive of the scene, give the characters intent, arc it out. And then when I hand it over to a story artist, they are bringing so much in terms of, that they are not just artists, that they are also cinematographers and directors and actors. And so they are bringing all of those elements to the boards. And, you see what they do, and then you get excited by all these visual dynamics, these relationship dynamics they're putting in. And then, I reflect that back in the script. And then it's this sort of like, cyclical, like process of inspiration. And it's, I'm going to miss it. I have to go back to live action.
It's true. And I think, I'll ask you both kind of individual questions, but, I feel like we're at a bit of a time of sea change where when I was coming up, and maybe the experience is different for you, but you were a producer and you were a film producer, you were a writer and you were a TV writer. And now the lines are starting to blur quite a lot. I mean, right now I have two jobs. I work in the kind of film sector and helping young people to find their voices, but then I also work in a museum, right? And I feel like all that mashup is a beautiful thing, but sometimes intimidating for folks. And so maybe just starting with you, Adele, talking a little bit about how working in live action film versus, for something like Crazy Rich Asians, and then coming and working in this amazingly reflective, responsive, real-time writing experience. How did you make that shift, and what was perhaps the hardest part to make that shift? Or maybe it wasn't hard at all and you loved it, but I would love to hear more about that.
That's a great question. I think the hardest part of it was also the most exciting part of it, which is that the biggest difference between live action and animation is the ability to adjust. And so, in live action, once you've shot it, that's the footage you have. You have to go make your own separate movie in the editing bay, and that's all you have. And if you have to go get reshoots, it's a big deal. Someone might get fired. But in animation, that's just how movies are made. That before you even get to, test screening the movie with test audiences, that the movie is put out storyboards, recorded voices, score, so that you get a real sense of how the whole movie is going to play. And this ability, first of all, I mean, it's great because, again, in live action, you're always watching a cut of your TV show or movie going like, oh, I would have changed that. Oh, I would have done this. And in animation, you get to make all those changes that you want to do. But it's a double-edged sword, which is you can keep tinkering with it until the end of time. Because if you're like me or most filmmakers, like things can, you always want to adjust. You always want to make it better. You always want to, take another swipe at it. And it's really not until Oznat tells you to like knock it off. And that we actually have a schedule to adhere to, that, you stop mucking with the whole thing. And I think for me, that was like, that was probably the biggest, the biggest adjustment, but also a really exciting one, which, I think specifically for writers in this, it really allows you to grow as a writer and to be able to lean in and develop a script the way you really want to. Because in features, usually, you have a couple of tries at the script, and then maybe you're on set and you see it all the way through if you're lucky, but then you're done. Whereas, for this movie, it was like 3 years of nonstop writing and rewriting. So, again, it can be very frustrating, but it's also incredibly rewarding.
And Osnat, I imagine, you've had experience as a producer in a number of different areas, but, talk a little bit about what your typical day looks like. Because I don't know that most folks know what a producer does. I'm a producer by day, and so my heart goes out to you. But I think just talk about your typical day and maybe the way that you ensure that all the voices are heard and you make decisions. Because I think that's something that whether you're a producer or a creative that is working collaboratively, people are really struggling with right now. So if you have any insights on that, I think we'd love to hear about it.
I'd say there is no such thing as a typical day. Definitely not now with the pandemic. But I spend a lot of my time in the story room with the story team, with Adele, with the writers, with the directors, certainly in the early years. And my job, if I try to define it, because it's really just to get the thing done and keep people successful, but always adjusting the team, always adjusting the schedules, always adjusting the resources so that we can keep elevating. It's not just get it done, it's get the best movie we can make done. Otherwise it wouldn't be interesting, right? I see my region where the creative meets the what meets the how. What we're making meets how the heck we're going to get it done, and what it's going to take. And that is sort of, I'd say, since you're a producer, you probably will know what I mean. Like if we have a superpower, it's just kind of, somebody described to me when I was at Pixar, they're doing cars, and they described how this racer, he said that a true racer, when they're racing, can in their mind's eye see the pattern of how they're going to get through all the cars to the front. That's how he's a winner. And the producer does that. You're looking at it and you can project ahead how on earth you're going to get it done. Obviously, things change every day. So my day might be in the story room and then dealing with staffing and then casting and maybe issues that have come up for anybody on the movie I'm the address to come to. And maybe, guess what? We're going to do the movie from home now. So bye, everybody take your computer. So then we thought, geez, it's going to be, probably a good 3 weeks at home. And that was last year around this time, actually last year today, I think, or something. So that became a different project. How do you make sure everybody's equipped? How do we get the technology up to speed? But also, how do we keep watching this process to find in it what works for us? We're a group that loves being in one room. We build on each other's ideas. Food plays a big part in, going off, having a meal, chatting. A lot of creativity happens not in the planned meetings. And Zoom is all about planned meetings. There's no chatting on the way to editorial. There's nothing, there's no, let's go grab a coffee and talk this through. So to adjust socially, we had to adjust. And then we had to keep track of details. Now they're from home, 450 homes. And that's a lot. So I don't exactly have a typical day, though it's typically full from the time we start till whenever night. And actually Zoom created for myself and the directors in the last year of production, we usually there till 9 o'clock. And instead, because of Zoom, we structured our days. And they were very disciplined days. And we all had dinner with our families. So there's something in the Zoom thing, in the whole pandemic time at home, that created a kind of a need for a different kind of trust in each other. And which is obviously, what the film is about. We all upped our game in how you offer a brief to somebody as to what it is you're looking for, an artist or whoever, because then we're all separate. We can't kind of stand over their shoulder at their desk, So we learned some things that I hope we carry forward. A certain discipline in work, certain level of trust and delegation. Plus, I love not always having to be in LA traffic, if you know what I mean. But so did I answer your questions?
You very much did, and I only have one more. So the time has gone by very fast together, yes. And you brought up a really beautiful point that leads to the last question, which is all about trust. And I think that people need space and time to create or to do the things that they need to do to bring creativity to life. And trusting themselves and trusting the voice inside of them is something we talk a lot about. And so, very briefly, because we are coming to the end of our time, but if you have, as writers or creators, as producers, any advice for folks to follow their voice, and especially the voices of communities here in Portland and beyond that can always use more and better representation, that would be so helpful to kind of leave people on a helpful note, but also a hopeful note, because we will get through this. And Raya is such a celebration of all of the things that you shared today, and we're so grateful for your time and for you visiting us here in Portland and beyond.
Well, I'll start it off. I'll say that, I grew up in Malaysia as a huge fan of Disney movies and a huge fan of American cinema and TV shows. Like, that was the way I grew up. It really opened up my world growing up in this town that none of you have probably ever heard of. And I don't think I ever really thought that I would be here, writing for a Disney animated feature or doing the work that I'm doing today. And what I've learned is, it was a long journey and the opportunities were not always there. But if you can find a way to tell your story and to be inspired by your own specific identity, and if you put the time into it, the industry is changing and there are so many more opportunities than there ever were. So if you find a way to tell your story, tell it well and get it to the right people, you could be sharing your story with the whole world.
Lovely. I'll just add to that. I also come from a place that's kind of unlikely for me to be where I am doing what I'm doing. I hope if Raya tells us anything, it's that every one of our stories count. Whoever you are, whatever gender you are, whatever part of the world you are, our stories are worth telling. And to do that, we have to tell them. So find a way. The bar is like, you can tell a story on your iPhone. You can tell a story on Zoom. Tell a story. If you've got stories to tell stories. If you want to be an animator, draw all the time. I'm not telling you to draw in your school books, but almost draw wherever you can. It's like that. Do that thing that you want to do, and you'll get more and more opportunities to do it.
Well, thank you so much again for being a part of our festival and a part of our community here in Portland and a part of our world. I can't tell you, as a mother of an 8-year-old girl, how awesome it was to sit with her and have that experience. So thank you for that, as well as a human being. We need more stories like Raya, and we need more folks like you encouraging and mentoring folks that are coming along. And we'll be the next, you guys. Thank you to Disney as well for the opportunity to do this. And we'll see you guys at cinemaunbound.org, where we do fun things and interesting things year-round here in Portland, bringing Portland to the world and the world out to Portland. Thanks.
Thanks so much.